Peter, we're starting with you and going down the row. Would you just introduce yourself for the sake of the record?
Yep, my name's Peter Morris.
Pardon?
My name's Peter Morris.
And your status coming here?
I'm the chairman of a charity in Northern Ireland called Eite. I'm a single father of 4 kids, and I'm also a member of the North Belfast Progressive Unionist Party in Northern Ireland.
I think whether you might speak up will be good. And that might be if somebody actually turns the microphone up for you.
I'm a member of the North Belfast branch Progressive Unionist Party. I'm the chairman of Men's Aid Northern Ireland, and I'm also a single father of 4 kids. Brilliant,
thanks. Marie?
Hello, my name's Marie Crowley. I'm a single mum of 2 children, but only one under 18.
My name's Sarah Broome, and I'm a single mum, unable to work because of my arm, my disabilities, and I'm a claimant.
Right. Paul?
My name's Paul Eite. I'm a single father of 2 sons, and I'm here as well because my tax credits were stopped.
Great. You're going to begin, Karen?
I'll begin if that's okay with Marie. So we're obviously very keen to understand what your recent experience has been of tax credits, and it's particularly experience of whether you have had an interruption to the payment of your credits, and how you were informed about that process. So I wonder if you could each just tell us very quickly what the recent experience is, if you've had your tax credits stopped, how you were informed about that, and when. So starting with...
My tax credits were stopped on a Thursday morning, the second last week in August, and the first I knew about it was when I checked my bank account.
Sorry, you're going to have to speak up a little louder, I'm really sorry.
My tax credits were stopped in the second last week of August on a Thursday morning, and the first I knew about it was when I went to my bank account to check my bank account.
Okay. And can I just ask you, I'm anxious not to get too much into what could be personal stories, but had you had similar experiences before?
Personally, no. Not to myself, no.
Okay, thank you. Marie?
Hi, I'm the same. My payments were due on the last Thursday of August, and it was only when I went to my bank and they weren't there that I was aware of them being stopped. No idea why they'd been stopped. Had no problems in the past. It was completely out of the blue.
My payments were also stopped at the end of August. I received a letter from Concentrix to say they hadn't received my information, and that is why my tax credits were stopped. I also received 2 other letters from HMRC with overpayments for both financial years, this one and the last, for just over £8,000.
And was that at the point of making a new claim?
No, I've been receiving tax credits for the past just over 4 years now since my son was born. I've been out of work for 4.5 years now because I had an injury to my shoulder. So I've been unfortunately having to rely on personal independent payment and employment support allowance for that time. So I get child tax credits through that.
Very helpful. And in terms of the information that you were told you had not provided,
yes.
What was your understanding of that? Did you feel that you had provided that information?
Yes, I received a phone call. To be honest, I can't even remember the last date of this phone call because I didn't see it as significant at the time. I had an operation in June of my shoulder, so I've had a very stressful time where I had to have care 4 times a day, community alarm, lots of things. Long story short, with the first contact I had from Concentrix, I was told that my address was financially connected to a person that I've never heard the name of before. He's also not the previous tenant because I did a mutual exchange, so I know that person. And at that point, when I spoke to them on the phone, the person I spoke to was very nice and explained that it must be a mistake. Sounds like it's a mistake after what you've told me. Send in as much of the information that we've requested, such as bank statements, bills, and all that sort of stuff, and we will correct the error on our systems. So I sent that off through the post office. and heard no more until when my payments had been stopped. So that's why it's very confusing to me, because at the time I didn't know who Concentrix was. I didn't understand it properly.
We could probably pursue a little bit more about how
Yes.
what your dealings with Concentrix were after you discovered a problem. But should we just hear from Paul about how he heard?
25th of August, I received a letter from HMRC saying that they'd overpaid me £5,110 of tax credits by that point. And the next letter I opened was from Concentrix saying because I hadn't replied to a letter that I'd replied to in May, that they'd stopped my tax credits. I was no longer entitled to them. So I was due the payment the next day. I then rang HMRC to say what's going on. HMRC said we cannot talk to you about it because it's with Concentrix. Our systems don't talk to each other, not compatible. Ring Concentrix, which I did. Slightly upset at that. There was a 53-minute phone call. I was on hold for 49 minutes of that phone call. The 4 minutes were them saying you need to write in about a mandatory reconsideration for your case. They were saying that I lived with someone at my address that I didn't. Like I said, I'm a single father of my 2 sons, and I sent all of the documents off in May. The person on the phone just said, well, they must have got lost in transit because we have not received the documentation. When I got the initial letter in May, I sent it off that day. It was, tenancy agreements, it's bills, it's everything else that they asked for. Sent all of that off. I even rang them 4 weeks later to say, have you got my paperwork? This was Concentrix, my HMRC. They then said, no, but we do have quite a substantial backlog at the moment, but if there are any problems, we will contact you. I never had any contact, and like I said, on the 25th, that was the first I knew that my money would stop, and it was stopped then, so no payment from then on.
So just because I know what my experience as an MP has been phoning up Concentric, and it's been very similar to yourself,
Just a little
being
bit.
put on hold. So was it the same for the other 3 of you?
It's been on hold for days on end, and giving up after 90 minutes, because when you've only got your mobile phone, it's an 0845 number. That's a lot of money. My phone bill in September was double what it should be. When you've not got any money coming in from tax credits each week, having to then think about having to pay double, it's just like, it was just another, kick in the face, really.
Yeah, so I rang one day, the worst day, I rang continuously, redial, because I was getting the engaged tone. And I recorded that I actually tried to ring them and got the engaged tone over 70 times. And then I gave up for that day. And I checked my phone bill, my mobile phone bill, and I recorded that I'd been on the phone to both HMRC and Concentrix over this 6-week period, 19 hours and 57 minutes, more so in the last 3 or 4 weeks. I've also used my parents' phones, friends' phones, so I'm not sure of the total figure, but just that figure alone shocked me, because this has consumed my life and my family's life.
And did you all have the same experience when you called HMRC, where you were told that,
HMRC, I think the longest I was hold on HMRC to was about 12 minutes.
Right.
Always.
But they just said they just said.
Sorry?
They just said that there's nothing we can do. It's with
Yes,
Concentrix.
it's unfortunately your case is with Concentrix. We don't have access to your file once it's been transferred to them. You will unfortunately have to call Concentrix.
When I found out my tax credits were stopped on a Thursday, I don't hang about. I went to the Northern Ireland Assembly, Department of Finance personnel, to seek a meeting with the Finance Minister of Northern Ireland to sort this issue out. My details were then passed down the line somehow and ended up with Concentrix. At the same time I was doing that, I was contacting Concentrix on social media. I also contacted BBC Northern Ireland journalist who contacted HMRC, and they overturned the decision the next again day. So my tax credits were reinstated the next again week. Now the payment wasn't a lump sum payment, it was spread throughout the rest of the financial year, which puts you in a difficulty then. But from that point on, I got in contact with Philip Cassidy direct, and I was able to help up towards 90 people directly, other families in Northern Ireland, to have the tax credit cases resolved through that process. So I made one phone call to Concentrix to find out which name was showing up on my tenancy and why my tax credits had been stopped. I had no issue getting through. They gave me the name, and we were able to verify that it was a previous tenant was on the home address. So my tax credits were reinstated the next game week from that.
Well, I'm also keen to know, because I noticed you nodding along, Marie, that you said that you received a letter from HMRC about overpayments for the last 2 years. Is that something that all of you had received as well? Yeah, right.
And that was the same day of the letter from Concentrix to say that our, our tax credits have been stopped. But also the letter from HMRC stated, in the reason for the tax credits stopping in my case was because you have recently told us about a change, you are no longer entitled. To which I was just burst into tears and thought, what's gone on here? And I was in tears most of that day, to be honest.
When I rang HMRC to question that, because I've got that letter in here that they said for the change of circumstance, they said it's just the standard letter that we send out, because with the way that the Concentrix things works, when they send it back over to HMRC to say no, the payments have to stop, they've not replied, that does classify as a change in your circumstances. But that's what we were told on the phone.
And did each of you then, I think possibly not Peter, your experience is obviously a bit different, you went for a mandatory reconsideration?
Yes.
And what happened?
In my case, I sent off my mandatory reconsideration with bank statements, tenancy agreements. I also put a lot more in. I put letters between, emails between me and the housing group, because I felt that my housing association had maybe a responsibility to tell me whether that person was an ex-tenant, so I could try and do some investigation about that. I sent emails to that I'd been trying to investigate who this person was, so I could prove that I'd never met this person. Now, I sent that through the post office, first class post. That wasn't received. They were original tenancy documents also, so I had to gather that information again, send it again by recorded delivery. That wasn't received. I then had to get all of that information again, and I sent it by special delivery. It was signed for on the, I think it was the 19th of September, and it was it 19th? Yes, 19th September, and HMRC didn't get it till Monday this week.
Paul or Marie, what was your experience?
I've initially received the first letter that Paul spoke about. The letter was sent on my daughter's 18th birthday, saying that they were suspicious that there was another adult in the house. Yes, there was. It was my daughter, which had already informed HMRC about, and I'd received an amended tax claim that took her off the claim come August when she went to university. So I was a bit, puzzled, and I just sent all the information back they requested. But then obviously they said that they'd never received that, so again the same, I had to resend it all again. All I sent, though, I didn't do all the bank statements, because I thought, why would they need my bank statements? That's my personal affairs. So all I sent them was my tax claim award letter that clearly stated that my daughter turned 18, was now an adult, and was taken off the claim as of the 28th of August, but my payment stopped on the 29th of August.
So sometimes when it comes to these kind of inquiries, we can be guilty of becoming too clinical and too procedural. So I'm just wondering if you could tell us, what's the impact of this been on your life?
It's been horrendous. I work only part-time because of health, and so my wages pay for my rent and my utilities, and so I rely on my tax credits each week to feed my children, get them to school. My daughter was just about to go to university. I didn't have any money to fill a food cupboard up when she went to university. She had to take second-hand stuff out of home rather than taking new stuff, as most students do when they go to uni. My housing benefit was stopped. So and I take a payday loan now, which now the HMRC is refusing to give me my lump sum, so I can't pay off debts that have accrued due to somebody else's error. This wasn't my error. If I'd not sent anything back, if I'd not sent my renewal stuff back, then I would hold my hand up and said, yeah, my mistake. But it wasn't. I did all the processes I'd been asked to do, and for no fault of my own. It was all messed up, and because of the little bit extra they give me each week to pay me back, that now tips me into the not being eligible for housing benefits. I'm losing £200 a month for my housing benefits. So still, I'm feeling always catching up because I've got debts to pay.
What's the reasoning given to you for that?
They just said I'm not entitled to it. They don't think I'm entitled to it. I'm not. what was the word they use? I wasn't financially unviable, so I could afford to deal with not having that £600 paid.
Because of a payment that was made to adjust for an earlier period of the claim?
So I had 6 weeks with no money. So I expected them to give me that lump sum back because obviously it was their error, not my error. But they said no, I wasn't entitled to it. So they give me £5 extra a week.
Am I correct in saying that HMRC refused to give you a lump sum? Yes. Yeah. What's their reasoning for that?
Because they said I can afford not to have it back, which I can't, I really need.
They told me it's just something to live it. That's why.
How many weeks were you without money?
I was only 1 week without money.
6 weeks.
6 weeks.
7 weeks.
7 weeks. Steve, you want to come
I was just trying to clarify the same point that Karen and Marie were raising. This is an HMRC decision. They didn't take into account the impact of their decision on people's incomes in relation to other benefits.
In my case, I used to have a good job. I used to work in social services and be, a very professional person. I had my hand has never affected me my whole life. I had a horse. I was very active. Now, when I had the accident, I've now got carpal tunnel. I had an investigative surgery in June, so during this period. I've been given the option from that to have a shoulder surgery that gives me a 50-50% chance of making my problems a lot worse or better, but with a long road to recovery. I have a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old, and I require support pretty much 24 hours a day to help me with my children because of the chronic pain. My shoulder dislocates on a daily basis, and my pain levels have gone through the roof because of this experience. Now, also during this period, after this operation, I also had reablement carers 4 times a day afterwards. I had a community alarm fitted. I consider myself to be a vulnerable person, and during this period, I have got to the point where I've been at breakdown point until I found Concentrix Mums and found that I was not alone. And this is why I'm sitting here right now, because of that group. Now, this has had such a large impact, and when I asked Concentrix how they can leave someone vulnerable that is clearly on a disability benefit and not able to work with that, needing carer support, they told me, we do not hold that information on you, we don't know anything about you. Well, if they're leaving people this vulnerable, then maybe they should. Maybe if there's you've got a disability, it should flag up on the system, or you've got care, it should flag up so that those people are vulnerable. And the fact that that didn't was very upsetting and confusing to me. I've also been discriminated against by Concentrix. I was told that if I send a typed letter in using dragon dictation, because I can't type, so I've learned how to use this, which was a bit difficult. If I sent in a typed letter, it wouldn't be accepted. And when I spoke to that person and told them my situation and said I can't write because my hand shakes, how do you expect me to write this letter by hand? They told me, well, you're just going to have to get someone else to write it for you, and that was the exact words. So I cried all day after that phone call, and it's been very emotional. And my kids, my 1-year-old and my 4-year-old have seen me cry.
And it's the same with me. I get personal independent payments, and my son is disabled. So I think both of us, we're not being able to pay for the support that we normally get because we've had to use that money for buying food and getting our kids to school and stuff. And when you initially rang up to say look, this is the situation, they know that we're disabled because we have the disabled elements on our claims, and for my child, so they know that information. And when you say look, I'm disabled, my child's disabled, they're like, well, it's not our problem, you're just going to have to wait.
Yeah, that's exactly the attitude I received.
Just also to add in very quickly, Sarah, the kind of way that you're feeling just now, I've had umpteen people coming into my office, into surgeries in exactly the same position. So just to put it on the record, thank you to the four of you for coming in, because there are so many other people out there who are feeling exactly like you and might not have the savvy to not to go to their MP or anything. So thank you.
I absolutely echo that. But can I just ask one last very quick question? And again, Peter, I think because of your experience, it's not quite so applicable to you. But I mean, did you have anyone who was able to assist or represent you or
I went
advocate
to
for
my
you?
MP. That was the, I just said, you need to help me because Concentrix won't talk to me. HMRC, won't talk to me because it's with Concentrix. I'm getting nowhere. I can't afford to keep being on hold for 90 minutes while somebody's playing nice music to me down the phone. I need someone to help. So now I've got a caseworker in my MP's office over in Erewash who's been really good and was, really instrumental in getting my weekly payments back, and they're now trying to fight for me for my lump sum, but obviously...
Before we leave that point, can Richard come in?
Yeah.
Well, it was just, on that point, there's a very good question from Karen there. In terms of the rest of you, just very briefly, Paul, did you go to your MP for help?
No, I'm quite good friends with one of my local councillors, and I did speak to him, but I just did it all by phone when speaking to Concentrix.
So you resolved it yourself?
I did, and by finding groups on the main group on Facebook that helped me get advice.
Very good.
Of how to do absolutely everything.
I contacted my MP by email, and we've pretty much been speaking by email to the caseworker in his office.
Great. And did that help get things
It's still
resolved?
taken 6 weeks. I contacted him on the same day that I received those letters straight away, so it's still taken 6 weeks.
Okay, so, Marie, thank you. You've told us your story. Peter, how about you? Because you've got your thing resolved very quickly.
I went to the Democratic Unionist Party local office in my local area, and this was on the Wednesday of the following week, because we realised this was going to become a big issue in Northern Ireland. And they said he would call me back and arrange an appointment for me going to speak to him on a Friday. That phone call never materialised. So instead I went to the heads of government, Department of Finance Personnel, Department for Finance and Department for Communities, to get contact details for those guys to release some form of public statement to inform the public. By that time I was already in liaison with Concentrix. People were coming to me, I put posts up on social media advising anyone who had an issue to come forward. I was speaking to them, getting their permission. We were sending their details to Concentrix, and we were having the cases wiped out within 4 or 5 days.
So you resolved the problem yourself?
Yes.
But you advised the Northern Ireland Assembly?
Yes.
And they put out a message?
They didn't. And they still haven't. I've asked the DFC Minister to put a public
so you didn't
statement regarding housing
specifically
benefit.
go to your MP?
I went to the local MP's office initially. They did not return the call that they said they would make to me. Okay. And the DFC Minister still currently refuses to release a statement regarding housing benefit being stopped. Okay. I received a letter to say that they're not aware of this issue happening regarding housing benefit, and it is happening. Housing benefit's stopping.
Okay, all right. I think that's a separate issue probably from today's one.
Back to Karen.
I think we just wanted to quickly hear from Paul, who didn't have a chance to say what the impact was for him.
When I rang up 25th, as I said, on the 25th of August, they said you need to write in a mandatory reconsideration and send in your documents again. I asked them what a mandatory reconsideration was, just for clarification what I had to do, and he simply said just send in your documents again with a cover letter that says I would like a mandatory reconsideration. Nothing else. So I had to Google what he actually wanted. Simple little things. That then got sent off, and then it was phone call after phone call after phone call, chasing it up. How long will it take? How long will it take? Etc. On and on. That was 5 weeks in total of that before it was passed back over to HMRC. I then rang HMRC. A lovely girl in the compliance team there spoke to me. She said it will get sorted, and I will ring you with updates for what would happen. And then my money was back within 2 weeks after that of it being back within HMRC. So I can say from my personal experience, Concentrix, very difficult to get hold of, very difficult to get any answer out of. It was we're dealing with it. But since it was back with HMRC, they dealt with it like wildfire. It was I cannot fault HMRC's actions for my personal case.
I think from my viewpoint though, because obviously with HMRC, the tax credits, you can either ring or you can use the web chats. The web chat's really good because it's really accessible, but the information that's given to you is conflicting every time you speak to, she speaks to somebody different all the time, and they give you different messages, and they're giving, you know, individual claimants different messages, and some will get the lump sum, some won't, you know, and there's no consistency.
I also think it's quite important, considering this is about Concentrix as well. I spoke to lots of different members of staff at Concentrix advisors on the other end of the phone, and I understand from working in, you know, in the public sector, when people are ringing up being rude to you, and it's not your fault on the other end of the phone. So I've tried to be very nice to people I've spoken to, and I've spoken to some lovely people. I spoke to one person that said to me, you know, I'm really sorry, I'm new here and I don't know the process of a mandatory reconsideration. I said, is there a complaints procedure? I don't know. I said, do I send it into the, you know, the same address that's on the letter? I was told, I don't know, I suppose you just send it into that one. I had another phone call where I was really spoken to very rudely, and I had to argue with this lady and say, please can I speak to a manager because I want to know the complaints process. She said, there isn't a complaints process, we don't have a complaints department, and speaking to a manager is going to do you no good, you can't speak to one. I asked her about 7 times before I said, look, I have the right to speak to a manager, can you please put a manager on? I then spoke to a manager who also told me that if I sent in a complaint about anything other than the manner I've been spoken to on the phone, if I complained about that process of what's been happened to me, that it would not even be looked at, and I have to complain to HMRC because they only receive complaints. They don't have a complaints department or a procedure, only to the manner you've been spoken to on the phone. That's it. And I find that strange.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And on that note, we're going to go on to Concentrix. I hope you've got time to hear what they have to say.
One more comment, if I might. I work for the NHS, I manage contracts every day, I'm Commissioner. I've worked all my life, it's only really the last 4 years that I've not been able to work fully because of my health. And to be reduced to having to ask for money from family and friends, having to rely on food banks, was so, I just can't get over the humiliation of that.
Any last comments from anyone else? Thank you very, very much.